نشكر للباحثين الأربعة الذين قدموا هذه البحوث المتميزة، والآن نفتح الباب للمداخلات والأسئلة. كل مداخل الرجاء أن يقدم اسمه ويوجه سؤاله إلى الباحث الذي يريد أن يسأله.
Dr. Alan Moore, I'm from the Corbell Graduate School of International Studies, University of Denver, Colorado. I have a question primarily for Dr. Yusuf Ramadan. There's an interesting theoretical question in communications because research in intercultural communications and behavioral psychology consistently reveals nearly 75% of the information transmitted in communications by the more higher context, collectivist cultures of the Arabic cultures, the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, South America, the Mediterranean, is transmitted non-verbally through gestures, eye contact, tone, volume, whatnot. These are not available through technology, particularly virtual technology. Some of the technological determinists suggest that this means that the more higher context cultures are going to be forced to communicate more in a more direct, individualist way, the way of the Western cultures. Could you engage this, please?
Dr. Uthman Arabi, I have a question to Dr. John Servais. I have a
commentary.
Okay. It's a more commentary, it's not like a question. In defining the role of communication in development, I think participative approaches, although progress over diffusionist approaches, still doesn't deal with the issue of power, which is, if we consider power as a cause of underdevelopment. That's the question.
معك الدكتورة هند الخليفة من قسم الدراسات الاجتماعية. عندي سؤال للدكتور اللي تحدث الأخير، الدكتور توماس من ألمانيا. The paper you have presented is very rich, and actually there's a lot of philosophy in this paper, but maybe the time was not enough to explain all the parts. Can you elaborate a little bit about the understanding of social change? You were talking about how social change is something to explain our lives, and it is considered or related to the way we see ourselves and see a change. And at this time I can remember say 4,000 years ago from ancient Egypt, someone who left holography saying that I think the world is coming to an end because young people are totally different than our generation, and they are causing many problems. And if we looked at this say, we would, it's amazing how this say was 4,000 years ago, and we still have the same perspective toward young people. Therefore, this is can be totally related to what you are introducing here, that social change is how we see ourselves and our lives. However, could you give us an example for a situation where social change is happening, and how could we see it from different perspective? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jack Chiu from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I have one question for Yan and one question for Thomas. The question for Yan is, in your mapping for the future, the number one is we should be interdisciplinary. But more specifically, can you mention a few or a couple disciplines that for the field of communication and social change, we should pay special attention to? So that's for Yan. And for Thomas, I share the previous question from the female hall, and I'd like to press this question even one step further. Is that in China, one of my friends is a leading blogger, and he has a very quotable a sentence a few years ago when we were talking about the national firewall, when some information are allowed, other information are not allowed into China. He had the saying to say, "We don't know what we don't know." How can we start to think about the second order thing that you were thinking about? And I was this is reminding me of the classic discussion in education. The pedagogy of the oppressed. The Pablo Freire is that we need to start first to think about what's wrong in what we know. Otherwise, we won't be able to know what we do not know. So is that a likely point to start the sequence of social change from within, not from the outside? That's a question for you. Thank you.
Oliver Boyd Barrett from Bowling Green State University, Ohio. I have one question for Jan and one for Thomas. For Jan, I wonder what your perspective is on issues of climate change and whether there is the prospect that really, if we are to take climate change for real, that sort of trumps a lot of the pre-existing priorities in the developmental and communication discourses. For Thomas, and I think there's a connection between my question and some of the previous questions you've got, is it theories of social change we need to concentrate on, or is it more theories of social constancy? In other words, what remains constant? What remains the same over time? What does that tell us about us? And then we might move from there to theories of social change.
Ramiz Ma'louf من Lebanon. I have a question for Dr. Ahmad. That is your name, sir, Mashayk? Ahmad. And one for Dr. Bauer. Dr. Ahmad, how comfortable are you in using terms like friends and real when you are discussing virtual realities? In other words, how applicable is a question to a student who has a friend in virtual reality, whether he thinks that friend is real? In other words, what does these words mean for you as a researcher, friend and real?